At the same time, Alexis Johnson was finishing her shift at the high-end restaurant where she worked as a waitress. The streets outside were slick with rain, but she still had a few things to take care of. She needed to catch the last bus home, check on her younger brother, and prepare for another grueling day. Alexis was used to the weight of responsibility, balancing her job with caring for her family. But as she walked towards the bus stop, a figure caught her attention. The black luxury car, parked in the rain, seemed out of place. The driver slumped over. Alexis paused for a moment, her instincts kicking in. She didn't have to know who the man was, only that he was in trouble. A quick glance around showed that no one else seemed to notice. The rain poured harder, but Alexis didn't hesitate. She ran to the car. The ambulance sirens faded as Richard Blackwood sat in the sterile hospital room, his mind replaying the events that had led him here. The doctors had assured him he would be fine, that it was just a mild heart attack, but they didn't understand. They couldn't understand. It wasn't the physical pain that weighed him down. It was the emotional shock of it all. He had spent years building an empire, acquiring wealth, but none of that had mattered when it came to a simple moment of life and death. A moment where a stranger had stepped in and saved him, without a second thought, without any expectations. He glanced down at his hand, where the 4 lines snaked into his arm, and felt the weight of his arrogance. He had never considered how fragile his life could be, how powerless he was when it truly mattered. The morning sun peeked through the clouds as Alexis made her way into work, the air crisp with the promise of a new day. Her footsteps echoed in the quiet of the city street, a stark contrast to the chaotic world she had left behind. As she neared the restaurant, she felt a strange sense of anticipation, though she couldn't quite explain why. Maybe it was the lingering thoughts of the previous night, or maybe it was just another day in a life that seemed to pass by in a blur. But today something felt different. Alexis shook off the feeling as she entered the restaurant, the familiar hustle and bustle greeting her like an old friend. She went about her routine, taking orders, serving drinks, and keeping the flow of the evening smooth. But her mind kept wandering back to Richard Blackwood, the man she had saved, the man whose life she had held in her hands for just a few moments, and yet those moments had changed everything. The cafe was quiet now, the afternoon sun casting soft shadows across the table where Richard and Alexis sat. The conversation had shifted to lighter topics, but the weight of their earlier words hung in the air, unspoken but understood. Alexis could tell Richard was still processing what she had said. She could see it in the way his eyes lingered on her, like he was trying to figure her out, trying to reconcile the woman sitting in front of him with the world he had always known. For Alexis, it felt like a moment of quiet victory, not because of any grand gesture, but because for the first time in her life she wasn't invisible. She was being seen, not just for the role she played in other people's lives, but for who she truly was. Weeks passed and life seemed to return to its normal rhythm for Alexis, though she couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. The days were still filled with the usual challenges, long shifts at the restaurant, caring for her younger brother, and managing the small moments of peace in between. But there was a new clarity in her life now, something that had emerged after her meeting with Richard Blackwood. For the first time she felt like she was standing on the edge of something, a future she hadn't quite planned for but was beginning to consider. Meanwhile, Richard had thrown himself back into his work, but he could feel the weight of his new awareness pressing on him. The encounter with Alexis had left a mark on him, one he couldn't ignore. It was as though she had unlocked something inside him, a recognition that his life, his success, had been built on assumptions and blind ambition, not on real human connections. One afternoon Richard called Alexis. His voice on the other end was calm, yet there was an unfamiliar sincerity in it that caught her attention. "Alexis, I've been thinking," he said. "I want to do something to help, something that goes beyond just words. I'm not sure what it is yet, but I feel like I should be doing more than just offering thanks. I want to give you the opportunity to build something of your own. Maybe you're not ready for it yet, but if you are, I'd like to help however I can." Alexis was quiet for a moment, processing his words. She had never expected Richard to make such an offer, let alone speak with such honesty. She wasn't sure what to make of it, but she knew one thing. It was different from everything she had known before. She had always taken care of others, but now Richard was offering to help her. For the first time, someone was offering her a chance, not based on her job or her role in their life, but on her potential. Richard called her later that week, as he often did, to check in on her progress. "How's everything going?" he asked, his voice calm but interested. Alexis smiled as she answered, feeling a sense of pride in her voice. "It's going well. There are some challenges, but nothing I can't handle. I'm learning as I go, and it feels good." Richard chuckled lightly, the sound warm and encouraging. "I knew you would. You've got something special, Alexis. Keep pushing forward. I'm proud of you." Alexis felt a lump form in her throat at his words. It wasn't just about the business, it was about the way he saw her now. It was the recognition that she was more than just a waitress or a person to be overlooked. She was someone who mattered. Meanwhile, Richard watched Alexis's progress from the sidelines, keeping in touch and offering support whenever she asked for it. He had always been a man of action, a man who made things happen. But this was different. This wasn't about building a company or creating wealth. This was about watching someone else build something on their own terms. He had seen Alexis transform before his eyes, from the quiet woman who had helped him, to the confident entrepreneur she had become. He couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in her success. In many ways, it reminded him of his own journey, though this time, he was merely a spectator. And even as he watched, he realized that the world he had built for himself, one of power, influence, and money, was no longer enough to define his happiness. The things he had chased for so long felt shallow in comparison to what Alexis had created for herself. Months passed, and Alexis felt the weight of her decisions settling in, but it wasn't a burden. It was the kind of weight that came with growth. With Richard's support, her business began to expand in ways she had only dreamed of. New clients came in, investors showed interest, and for the first time, Alexis allowed herself to believe in the possibility of something much larger than herself. She had always been afraid of reaching too far, afraid that if she reached for the stars she might fall. But now, with each new milestone, she felt a sense of freedom in the unknown. The challenges were still there, but they no longer felt impossible. She was ready to face whatever came next. Richard had been there every step of the way, offering advice when needed but never pushing. He respected her vision, and together, they had built something that was starting to take on a life of its own.